And it's infrastructure. We're spending way more time now on the information highway than we are on asphalt highways.
Yeah,
So it's actually an infrastructure question.
yeah, it's a great quote actually.
That was a small snippet from our guest for today, Eli Meltzer from Meltzer Mandl Architects, all the way from Brooklyn, New York. And we're going to be talking about affordable housing, and a lot more in this episode. Let's go. Hey guys, this is Manish here and welcome back to the Archgyan podcast, where you will get some awesome yarn on architecture, design, tech, and everything related to architecture. So in this episode, we have with us Eli Meltzer, all the way from Brooklyn, New York, and he's the principal architect at Meltzer Mandl Architects. So Meltzer Mandl Architects was founded by Eli's father, Marvin H. Meltzer, almost 40 years ago. And they specialize in a variety of housing projects like low-income, affordable housing, homeless housing, and their portfolio also encompasses market rate and luxury housing. So it's needless to say that they've gone on to win various national and international awards for their work, and they've been published in various media publications all around the world. And regarding Eli, he's presently the principal architect at Meltzer Mandl Architects, and he oversees most of the work in the firm. He's a huge advocate for the latest and greatest in design technology like BIM and parametric algorithms, and he likes working on the cutting edge of building design and construction. He's also a published author and has presented at various national and international conferences, and he's published articles on the topic of design and development of Jewish institutional capital projects. So this is going to be more of a housing-based episode. We're going to go in depth on affordable housing. What's the housing going to be like in the future of architects, and how we're going to work post-pandemic, how Eli transitioned from philosophy to architecture. So there's going to be a lot of philosophy as well in the episode. Designing future homes, multifunctional homes, architectural education, sustainability, and there's a whole lot more in this jam-packed episode. So for more on the episode, like podcast show notes and links, head to archgyan.com/48. Let's jump straight to the episode. Eli starts off by sharing how he got into architecture. Let's go.
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, I studied originally philosophy. I actually studied film, and I didn't necessarily always plan to go into architecture. Growing up, my father had the business, and I grew up in Manhattan. So, I like to say from my bedroom I could see the Chrysler Building.
Right.
Which was cool, and definitely sort of around architecture. Arch Record was always in our house. When we went on vacations, we would go and check out, some of the sites wherever we were. My father still talks about Arco Santi. It's a sort of a whole development down in the Arizona desert, which he's enamored with, and that's a trip I remember. But I worked for him for some summers. I did renderings even in high school, which was fun. That was back in the Form Z days. That was the cutting edge technology.
This was in the 90s.
A teenager. Yeah, that was in the 90s. A teenager, no one in his office knew how to use it, so I was the one who was rolling with Form Z. But so that was through high school. In college, I went to a school up in New Hampshire. A really good liberal arts college, and just got into the culture there. I was, as I said, I was into philosophy. Out in the woods there, you get into the deep thinking. It's a really beautiful place.
Yeah.
And the, deep winters, cold winters. Afterwards, I spent some time studying in Israel. I was getting in touch with my Jewish roots there.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back home and I met my wife, and it was time to start thinking about my career, and architecture was something I'd always had an interest in, and I just decided I was going to go for it, and it would be exciting. Fortunately, I saw my father loved it. And I saw growing up, it was something exciting for him, and he was always excited about it, and he loved, especially the practice of architecture in terms of design and construction of the buildings. And so that, he wasn't forceful or he didn't prescribe it to me, but his enthusiasm for it came off. So I went to NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology.
This was your master's, right?
The state's,
2 years.
This is for a master's. Yeah, this is the State School of Architecture in New Jersey, and it's the largest public architecture school, I think, in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a 3-year program, and that was it. I was on my way. I graduated there in 2013. I spent a few years working at Cone Patterson Fox on the Hudson Yards project, 55 Hudson Yards specifically, which was a really good introduction. I got to do sort of everything. It's a 50-story skyscraper here in Manhattan.
Right.
And I did everything from the foundation to blast hardening and waterproofing and bathrooms and curtain walls and the roofing. And I actually was the BIM coordinator for that project. So I modeled the curtain wall, which was very difficult, and rolled that out.
On Revit, right?
On Revit. Yeah, that was a really big task. And it had these modular panels.
So
and then
Pro and Revit families back in the day as well.
It had a few layers to it. I get a little bit dizzy just thinking about it, and so after that, I spent a few years at a smaller firm. It's called Clement Houseband, doing some institutional work, hospitals and schools. Did some project management over there. And now about 2 years, I've been working in the firm Meltzer Mandl, and working with my father, and just sort of, as you mentioned, just getting soaking up we call it the Hauser mentality and the housing ethos, and understanding what that's all about. And then obviously more technical aspects of the business, which now is everyone's talking about, things like payroll and staffing and office space and all these other things that come along with it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, before we get into how things are going to change during this time, how much, why did you work with your dad right off the bat, because he was a established architect working in New York. Why did you go through this journey of, working for other firms, going through a different transition, and then joining your dad's firm?
I mean, I think part of it was the amount that I've learned. And frankly, it's a competitive business. New York City is a competitive place. And I, went through the gauntlet a little bit, so to speak. Part of it also had to do with just where the firm was at. You mentioned a little bit of the history, but I'll give some more background. My father has been in New York City real estate probably for about 50 years. He was a developer in the 1980s. The market in New York City is one of the first, not the first, but in terms of real estate crash at the end of the 1980s, that was a really big deal, and that affected him. After that, he went out of development, and he was just doing architecture, and that's when he actually got into affordable housing. Was after the crash in the early 90s. And at that point, the affordable housing industry in New York City was really starting to ramp up. And he was in on that. Supportive housing, formerly homeless housing, women's shelters. And I mean, frankly, that there was not much other work going on at that point because of the state of the market. So now in 1995, he partnered up with a man named David Mandl, and that's the Mandl of Meltzer Mandl.
Right.
And they started the firm, and the market was picking up at that time, and they just did really well. They did probably about 10,000 units. Initially, a lot of affordable, but more and more market rate and luxury. We like to say that we mirror with what the market is. We like to respond to the market. So it just happens to be, I think, that in terms of volume, affordable housing is most of what not most, but is a larger percentage of what gets built, somewhere around maybe 60% of what gets built in one form or another. And so that's where we are. We try to respond to the market. But as market rate heats up, depending on the cycles, we get more and more into it. David passed away. He was a young man. He's in his 50s in 2008. And then the market went out again in 2008.
Yeah.
So in that period, my father was sort of ratcheting down the business a little bit. He's in his 80s now. And so when I came out of school, the business was also it was I guess it was smaller than it had been. So that was part of the calculation also. And the timing just sort of worked out that when I came in, it was the right time, and now we're growing again.
And was it that like you always worked on housing projects, or was it also a mix of taking up, like in our case in India, we do take up interior design projects, we take up residences. So it's always architects always have this mix of projects. So how difficult was it, just sticking to affordable housing or housing type projects?
I think part of it, again, it has to do with the market. That's a large volume of what gets built in New York City, right? And that's where my father raised his family. That's where I live, and where I'm raising my family. And he wanted to stay local. And part of it also, it really comes down to with like marketing. You sort of know, if you can put yourself in a niche, you can know who to speak to and how to speak to them, and you can be more specific and targeted in your marketing, and you can be more aggressive. And then on the flip side, in terms of production, we feel like we have our product very, very finely honed. When it comes to doing an apartment building in New York City, we just think we're the best, and we think when it comes from zoning to the financial, weights that are put on a project, it's again, it's very competitive, and the margins are small, and any little bit you can get of an advantage over the competition, I'm talking about from a developer, is a big deal. If it's a few hundred extra square feet or one or two extra apartments, that can make or break a deal. So we've sort of gone all in on that, and it's been really successful for us.
All right, great. And talking about design, right? Housing, of course, you need like maximum built-up space. So you're pretty much constrained to a box in a way. So how do you explore design, and how do you make those projects, aesthetically pleasing as an architect?
That's a great question. I think, and hopefully, I think we're going to have a chance to look at some of our work.
Yeah.
I think we always try to be playful, right? And our motto is, if it costs you $10 to build a building, we don't need $11, but you can't only give me $9, right? So we like to get involved early and clear what the budget is, and once we know that, then we sort of give ourselves some room to play, right? And whether it's material or colors, especially the affordable housing stuff. We had a client that we did a lot of work for. His name was Peter Fine, Atlantic Development, and sort of the arrangement that Peter and my father had was, he said to Peter, my father said to Peter, if the building costs the same, do you care how it looks, right? He said, no, hit my budget and work to my pro forma, and otherwise, you're the architect, and you make it and do what you need to do. So that was, in a sense, a license for us to have some freedom, and we did a lot of creative things with stucco, right, the drive it, in terms of color and even in terms of form. And that's actually sort of what put us on the map, that our buildings are distinctive in that sense, and also in what it brings to a community. This is these buildings are a fat part of the fabric of a community, and it needs to contribute to it in a beautiful way.
Can you see the screen which I'm sharing?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. So what we're looking at here, this is the Roscoe Brown Apartments in Bronx, New York.
Right.
This is an affordable housing project for Phipps Houses, who are one of the largest non-for-profit affordable housing developers in America. And you can see in these pictures that the building is built on a 40-foot tall rock outcropping.
Oh yeah.
It's a full city block, and the geography in the Bronx is such that these rocks are everywhere. They're either above the surface or very close to the surface. In fact, when they talk about the Bronx refers to the hills that are up there, the rocky hills that are up there.
Right.
And it's pretty dramatic. You walk around the Bronx, there's big changes in elevation. So this was a full city block that had never been built on before, just because of this rock outcropping, and just no one was able to access the value that was there in terms of floor area
Mm.
and potential bulk of a building. So, but we had some experience having done a lot of work in the Bronx and how to work with the rock.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, let's just, we said, should we chop it up? Should we raise it? And what we said was, let's just build on top of it. So what you're looking at here in this picture, these are a series of bearing walls, right, that are running perpendicular to the street, and we just sliced them through the rock.
Oh,
And,
nice.
and we built on top of it, right? The first residential floor there is the third floor of the building above, and that's above the rock. And we actually were able to get all the floor area, and even went to New York City Planning Commission, and we got a rezoning, a variance to get more floor area.
Right.
This is 100% affordable housing project, so this was, everyone was on board for that, and it turned into obviously a really dramatic piece of architecture. If you can keep scrolling through.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like there's an entrance, right? Because the boulders seem to block every part of it. So it's like a play between architecture and rock, right?
It's funny because you can see it here. Basically, where the white mass comes down and hits the grade.
Right.
That's where the entrances are. So there's three entrances. Now, they didn't know this at the time, but they have concerns with access control in terms of getting people into the building. So now, when they design these, you try to provide a single point of access.
Right.
So this building had 3 lobbies. Now they prefer to have 1 lobby. So the owner actually came to us, about 6 months ago and said, "Can we connect the lobbies?"
Okay.
And we thought, we looked at it a little bit, but we realized we could connect 2 of them, but we couldn't connect them through the rock. But there are three entrances, and you go up and over the rock, and it works. The building also is split into 3 on the interior. It has to do again with maximizing. There's a zoning bonus that you can get that we took advantage of by splitting it into 3 buildings. But again, the material. This is an example. The materials here, it's brick, right? It's brick.
So it's cladding, and it's a concrete structure with cladding, right?
The piers that are going through the rock are poured concrete. Above that, it's block and plank. It's as simple as you can get. It's right. Concrete block, 8-inch concrete block units, and then 8-inch plank that you span you span from one wall to the next. So it's inexpensive, and it's quick to construct. And the exterior wall is just a masonry wall construction. And these are windows, right? There's no curtain wall here. These are punched windows, and we try to get, again, like I said, we try to get playful as we can with the massing, with the fenestration, with the color. It's striking. The red and the white brick is striking, right? And especially when you go up there in that neighborhood, it really stands out, and it's special. And this is where it's at. This building didn't cost them more to construct, but we feel like it has a lot of character to it. And for us, it was a really fun project.
Yeah, it's more like an art piece, right? And
Thank you.
Gives you the facade, especially the play on the facade with the various. I don't know how you've managed to place those windows, whether it was because of a functional reason or more for an aesthetic reason, or it must be the.
There's a certain. There's a certain range where you can play within, right? So there's, at the end of the day, there's bedrooms and there's code requirements, how much light you need. And then within that, you have some room to play. There's also construction, issues, right? Depending where the bearing is, and depending how you're going to carry the brick, there's limitations there. So, but those limitations, otherwise you're just, shooting in the dark. So we need some limitations. We need something to restrain us and give us a space to play in.
And these do look like floor to ceiling or at least like maybe like a 1 foot uh, sill level and maybe 8 foot lintel, right? For most of the windows, so they seem pretty vertical.
You know, those little dark spots that you're looking at
Yeah,
underneath the window, those are PTEC units. So the sill is actually right above that,
right.
right? And then there's a little spandrel piece, but again, the sill is a normal sill height, what is it, 2'8", and it goes up to a head height is probably about 7 feet. It's not, but by stretching it over 2 floors, it makes it looks longer, right?
Awesome. Yeah, it definitely requires a special kind of knowledge to design these kind of housing typologies and understand not only the design but also the various standards, the constraints, and whatnot, right?
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it, from building code to zoning, and that's why it's really important to go to an expert, whatever you're doing. You know, if it's for an office building, we don't do office buildings, and there's so much that goes into it. I've worked on office buildings. I worked on Hudson Yards. That
Hmm.
there's all these things that go into detailing a curtain wall, right? Understanding an open floor plan for office planning. In terms of the core and shell. Um, there's so many small details that you don't know where you have room to design, where you have room for design, and what's required. And it really just takes a lot of time, and doing it many times, right? Doing it over and over again, and feeling the pressures of a market, and feeling the pressures of the construction budget and the construction schedule. And it just has to, you have to get it in your bones at some point.
And do you feel like technology has helped, with I'm sure like all these projects require a BIM model, right? As a mandatory submission to the government or to wherever you guys give those drawings.
It's getting more, but again, the name of the game here is simplicity, right?
Hmm.
So just like we do a lot of this, the engineers do a lot of it. The builders are generally builders who are doing a lot of it. So there's sort of a lot of, unspoken understanding about what this stuff needs to get done. So we do some BIM, but in truth, the less the better sometimes, because people know, and they don't necessarily always need that level of detail, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. But just the state of the art is BIM, and architects now know BIM, and I love BIM, and there's a lot of advantages to it. But I don't think that it's BIM, I don't think is changing the quality of the architecture.
Hmm.
It's definitely adding, levels of error checking, and it's improving the quality of the construction documents. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think, by far and wide, it's still very crafty, affordable housing. You still need to get your hands dirty. Now, that being said, we do try to leverage technology as much as you can. My father does everything by hand. I like to use grasshopper scripts.
Oh, nice.
But it comes back to the same question, which is, how does that get you in touch with what the architecture is about in a tactile way?
And have you like incorporated some amount of scripting in any of your projects? There is this big divide between what happens in the studio and what happens in reality, right?
Yeah. When it comes to design, for example, these windows. This building was not done with a script. These windows, and it still looks relatively random, right? Now, would it look more random with a script? Maybe, but where I found the most benefit in the scripting is in terms of repetitive tasks and efficiencies in workflow. Right? Or even when it comes to like zoning, right? You can very quickly mass out buildings with a script, and you can get a sense of what the shape of the building, because there's a lot of restrictions in New York, so that's perfect for a script. When you have, the more inputs you have, the better.
Yeah.
But when I was in school, I was all about scripting, but it's in practice you have to pick and choose your spots, but it can be very, very powerful, and it has helped us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, now the latest version of Revit, they have generative design as I mean inbuilt, so you could possibly leverage that as well to understand various lighting or different other inputs in the building, right?
Yeah, and the best thing for us is when we get a young guy like yourself, right, comes out of school or is really up to date with the latest technology, and that's exciting for us, and we're always willing to try, and we're always open to using these new ideas. Like it's the same concept. We feel confident enough about what we're doing in our workflow that we have room to try new things, and we're always open to it, and we're always looking for for fresh ideas and people with bringing exciting ideas to the table.
Right. I don't know if this is going to be a vague question, but since you come from a background of philosophy, right, how much of an overlap do you see between architecture and philosophy? I mean, I'm sure it's most of it, but still.
Yeah, again, in school, I was sort of a bookworm. I spent a lot of time in the library, understanding and learning about architectural history and architectural philosophy. And frankly, for the last 7 years, it didn't play out that much. Now that being said, and I think this maybe is a good time to transition, is given what's going on, given the pandemic and what it's done to our cities, I think it's a time to do some thinking. And these questions about urbanism, about our cultures and our societies now are philosophical questions that have real relevance in terms of architecture, in terms of design, in terms of planning. So on a day-to-day basis, you may not see it, but it's there at the core. And we definitely, we have a philosophy, in terms of architecture, in terms of in terms of the values, a value chain that we want to put into our designs, into our buildings. That is the foundation of how we make design decisions. And we try to streamline it. We try to, like I said, we try to get it into our bones so that we don't have to think twice about it. But there's for sure a philosophy that underlines the work that we do, and we're always trying to refine that and to imbue it in our office and in the work that we do.
Yeah, definitely. Like the world is definitely going to be a different place, after this pandemic dies down. How much of an effect do you feel would it have on us architects and the projects that we're going to design in the future?
I think that the biggest question, and I think the biggest place of discussion is going to be over this question of density, right? Because in one hand, we've seen, frankly, the virus, spread very fast in dense places.
Exactly.
Right, large cities, and in the denser neighborhoods of those cities. To put it simply, in the poorer neighborhoods of those cities, right? The virus just spread very, very fast. So clearly, it's related to density. At the same time, and I'll speak about America, but I imagine it's true in India and other places in the world. We have a housing shortage. We have more demand than there is supply, and we cannot keep up with the demand, and that's going to be exacerbated. People are out of jobs. People already are struggling to pay rent, and that's just getting stronger. And when that happens, people move to cities. They move to cities to look for work. They move to cities to look for affordable housing, and the need is going to grow. So on one hand, we have to deal with the consequences of density, and at the same time, we need to still push for more density. We need to still push to increase the capacity, the stock, or the supply of housing that's affordable, and housing that meets the needs of the citizens. Whether it's New York City, it's America, it's India, it's a really big need. So at its core, though, there's a design challenge there. How do you provide for two opposite needs at any given time? I think the other challenge that now architects are faced with, although I think this is maybe more opportunistic, is that you've now had huge segments of the population working from home for a long stretch of time, right? So our homes and children learning from school at home, our homes have become offices, our homes have become schools.
Exactly.
Or, for me, my home has become my synagogue. I pray in a synagogue several times a day, and now that it's closed, my synagogue is closed, and I have to pray from home. They become our civic centers. In terms of zoning boards are now done virtually, and people present, and the board members meet from their homes. So the home has become. So it's become, on one hand, much more important. You're spending much more time there. You're spending much more time with your family and your domestic environment, and it's also becoming multifunctional. Now, it will obviously recede. It will draw back once the pandemic recedes and once the restrictions get lifted. But I think, in a certain sense, it's never going to go away, because our eyes have been open to these possibilities that are just real, and people actually like things about it. And businesses like it too. If you can reduce the cost of, for example, the amount of floor area that you have to lease by 25 or 30 or 50%, and there's not a big hit to your production, I think any business would make that trade.
So we need to redefine
all
what
ends
a
of the
home
spectrum.
is, right?
We need to redefine what home is, and we need to maybe open our eyes to what was there all along. Maybe we've been running away from it to a certain sense,
there's a lot of positive things coming out of the COVID, but once only after it dies down, will it be even more positive? I mean, even for CO2 is at an all-time low. There's so many positive things as well.
That's right. You can actually breathe the air, and you only leave your house to go to a park, right? There's a lot of beautiful things that the mask has been taken off of, so to speak. Even though now we have to wear masks, but there's other things that are now our eyes are open to, which I hope they will stay, and I'm sure a lot of them will stay.
And what do you feel like if you're designing a home in the future, or a housing structure, how much of an emphasis would you give on the technological side of making a home, future-proof and ready for the next pandemic? I don't know if hopefully that never happens, but still.
Well, some of it's going to be mandated, I imagine. The history of building codes in America has traditionally been driven by disasters, natural disasters, whether it's fires, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's floods, and certainly a pandemic qualifies. So there will be changes to the building codes. There'll be legal changes. I imagine there'll be changes to zoning that will come out of this. And again, there's going to be changes just in people's preferences. People are going to be anxious for a while, right? I don't know. One very simple thought that comes to mind is, maybe we're going to need to put more elevators in buildings, because people will not feel comfortable crowding in elevators as they used to. Or maybe corridors need to be designed as a loop, so that you can circulate in one direction. Or maybe you need sort of waiting areas when you get off an elevator to let traffic pass. These are just some thoughts off the top of my head. Again, and then getting back to this idea, do all apartments need to, in some sense, have home offices in one form or another? We actually do a lot of that, because the code allows you. Or maybe co-working spaces are incorporated into these buildings from the beginning. And then of course there's the virtual technology. What we're doing right now, video chatting, right? And that's our mode of human communication now. And it's infrastructure. We're spending way more time now on the information highway than we are on asphalt highways. So it's actually an infrastructure question.
Yeah, that's a great quote, actually.
Yeah, I'm sort of amazed that it all works. You know, how many people are Zooming right now, and they've been able to actually keep up with demand. That's amazing to me. But does it become, or maybe in apartments, if you don't have a home office, maybe though at least you need to have a video conference nook, so you can have a nice clean background, and you can go on a web conference, and your family members don't need to tiptoe around and walk a certain path in the home. Actually, we designed, or I designed a plastic surgery office at a hospital here.
Mm-hmm.
This is about 3 years ago, and in the design we designed in a telehealth booth, because these things were already happening, and now they're going to be they're going to become even more integral. But there's that's a simple answer. You don't maybe need an entire home office, but you do need somewhere, almost like a phone booth in your home where you can have some privacy, even from your family. You could book the conference room with your spouse, or with
So
your
kids don't
teenage
disturb
children.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, is it, how do packages get to your door if everything is coming, through
And
internet orders and
and now drones
groceries?
also, right? So you'll have to think about balcony deliveries possibly.
Sure. There you go. No, there. That's right. That's right. If you're staying home and you're getting deliveries, and I imagine there's issues. Orders are delayed, but I think a lot of people probably like it. And Amazon is renting a lot of new warehouse space. Business is great for Amazon. These are new modalities of living that people like, and we'll see how it plays out, in the market. But definitely worth trying, and definitely worth seeing what sticks. And now's a time when people are open to these new ideas.
Yeah, definitely. But I just want to bring something to light, which is, there's a large chunk of the population which is still struggling, and that is the homeless. And in our case, in India, there are homeless people, there's migrant laborers. There's so many poor people that they bear the biggest brunt, especially during a pandemic like this. So, how do you feel that architecture could help? Affordable housing could help? How do we scale it up and make it comfortable for not only us but for everyone?
Thank you for asking that, because it's a really important question. I think that's sort of at the crux of a lot of this. And it's, going back for a second, asking about some of these new modalities of living, I think a lot of that is maybe only relevant for what I'll call white collar workers. What we've seen here in New York is that a lot of people have had to continue to go to work, whether they're working in hospitals, whether they're working for the city, and frankly, it's blue collar jobs. Construction has continued, even at a reduced clip, and now, the governor has announced that construction will be one of the first industries that can restart. And again, these are blue collar jobs. So I don't think, economically speaking, that working from home will necessarily be something that's there for the whole population. So we have to deal, again, coming back to the density question, how do you provide more housing that's affordable, that's high quality, that brings positivity to the neighborhood, to the community, you're right, for these people who are now newly homeless, or on the brink of homelessness, or are newly out of a job, and these jobs may not come back.
Yeah.
White collar workers may now become blue collar workers, and it's an issue that frankly, it's an infrastructure issue. It's an issue that affects our society on so many levels, because it really takes up resources, and we need to properly house people to stabilize our society as a whole, right? We need to have places for people to live, that they can then go and work, and their kids can then go to school. But if we don't have homes for people, then frankly, our society is not fulfilling its basic needs. And that's more important now than ever. So again, I know that there's going to be backlash to density, to city living, to putting a lot of people in smaller spaces, but it's more important now than ever. And we can make it safe. We will make it safe, and we can make it beautiful, and it will still be beautiful. This is a beautiful world, and we want to continue to make it more and more beautiful, and just reveal the beauty that's there.
And do you feel that going forward, there would be a lesser spend on exuberance and these luxury projects, and a more emphasis on, providing for everyone, that is for the homeless and for the guys who actually need housing and proper architectural housing?
I can't see how it won't be. I mean, you're going to walk around, I think, New York City, and you'll see some buildings that were built over the last 5-10 years, and you sort of ask yourself, how did they do that? Is that market going to still be around? Is it even ethically the right thing to do? It will continue, and we will continue to provide those services, of course. But I think that they're going to have to start to learn to do more with what we have, right? That we can't work with excess, and architects have worked hard and are going to continue to work hard to provide really high quality work. But we personally have been doing this type of work. This is what we've been doing for 30 years. We feel, there's a lot of talk about essential services. We think our architecture is essential. We think we always tried to hone in on what the values are, and what this building and this project really needs to provide. And to do that, like I said, it doesn't need to cost you $11. If it costs 10, we can do it for 10, and it's going to be a really beautiful, nice building. And that skill set is really important right now, because we have to continue to provide the services, and it can't just be drab architecture. It can't just be, dark spaces. It has to still be really high quality, and it has to still provide people with a sense of home. So that comes down to simplicity of materials, clarity of intent, and execution, right?
Yeah, I think there should be an extra emphasis on simplicity, just like how Steve Jobs wanted to make everything so easy for users to use. But there is a certain architectural audience where they feel that box buildings are boring, they're too drab, there's nothing exciting about them. We need more fluidic architecture. So do you feel that in the future that affordable housing can also be more fluidic, just to please, or is it only going to be the same box type buildings? I mean, this is sort of a difficult question to answer, but
Right. I think where I'm going here, and what we're seeing, is that what you would call 5 years a box building was actually ahead of its time. Right? That in this era that we're coming into, that's, so to speak, state of the art. Now it's hard. It's very hard to design a simple, rigorous building. It's very, very difficult, right? And to make it beautiful it's not something that you can just do in a day. It's not something that you can spit out of Rhino and spit it out of Maya. And I know these things, and I love them, and I have a lot of fun with them. But it's not. I believe it doesn't fit into our values necessarily, in terms of what we want to provide for the people and for our clients. But that doesn't mean that it's not exciting, and it doesn't mean that it's not transformative, and it doesn't mean that it's not beautiful. Now, if you're asking about maybe parametricism, right? That's a question what the place of that is in housing. I honestly think that it might be more appropriate in terms of planning and urbanism, right? It's important in terms of networks, which maybe are virtual or digital, or supply chains, right? And those are real spaces that I believe that's where the parametric is more relevant and more applicable than in the brick and mortar, because people have been trying to democratize that type of design for, let's say, the last 10 years, if not longer.
Yeah, even if you go to architecture school, it's all about these fancy designs and crazy graphics. So, but once you get out of the real world, it's way different, right?
Yeah, but again, it comes down to to putting design first, right? I love it. I love, the next time we get together, I'll show you my school projects.
All right.
And I love when I interview someone and they come and they show me something that's all meshed out, right? And it has some wacky texture maps on it. I think it's awesome, and that's what we should be. That's what our students should be learning to do in school, because they're putting design first. They're letting their minds go. They're using the technology we have for creativity, and they're just so facile with it to a way that if you don't do that, you can never get there. Now, when it comes to then providing something like affordable housing, that's where the tension happens, and that's where it's really exciting. How do you take those skills and take that drive and take that energy and just use it to meet people's needs,
Yeah.
and to improve our society? And we can't get tied up in the form, right? Because I think it has to do with the way we think about it and the way we look at buildings and the way we conceive of buildings, that's not necessarily tied to the form and the shape of the building. And that type of design is still relevant, and it's still a valid way to teach students, and it's still a valid way to think. But it happens on so many other levels. There's supply chains, there's understanding how contractors work, there's understanding how a real estate transaction gets done, and these are all the inputs to your algorithm, so to speak. And the building that comes out of it is a result of all these inputs. So it might look different, but I think the way of thinking is still very valid.
Yeah, form definitely follows function, and also a lot of inputs as well, constraints and so many other things.
And this is even more than function. It follows, I'm going to say since we're talking about what's essential, I'm going to say form follows essence, right? So let's talk about an apartment building. What's the essence of an apartment building? What are the values of an apartment building? It's a home, right? It's a construction project. It's a piece in the fabric of a community. These are the values that are at the essence of an apartment building. It's a financial transaction. So the form follows the essence. The form follows the values that are driving the creation of this project, right? So it's not minimalist, right? We're not using brick because we've decided that this is a beautiful material that we want to focus on and only work with brick. We work with brick because it's a material that people know how to use. Craftsmen know how to use it. Builders know how to use it. The market knows how to provide it at scale, right? Architects know how to detail it. And people are comfortable when they see a brick building walking down the street. So let's use brick and let's do a really beautiful brick building, right? Because that's what the essence of this building is about, are meeting all these people's needs and satisfying their values.
And before I want to go back to architecture school now and make some thesis which is related to what's happening right now. So how do you feel that the education system in architecture is going to change, or do you feel that it would change, or maybe bring in new ideas to students? That's for sure. That's definitely going to happen, I guess.
Right. When I was in school, there was Hurricane Sandy came, which was I don't know how much you heard about it over there, but it really did a lot of damage to New York and the New York region. So that happened right before my last semester. So we had a few projects that and there was a lot of thought put into what does it mean now, to be flood resilient, and those semesters were not about form. They were asking serious questions. Our professors were asking serious questions from us in our studios, and that's the biggest thing we can ask of our students, is that they should think seriously about these questions. Think seriously about density. Think seriously about home and domesticity, right? Think seriously about construction and infrastructure and scale. And economies, and now we can't expect students to be able to weigh all these things in a moment the way we do in practice. But take one of these questions and take it seriously and explore it with the tools that you have. If you know 3ds Max because that's what you've been doing, then use that and explore these questions and attack these questions and ask more questions of your own. And that's the biggest thing we can ask from our students. That they're going to come, they're going to get jobs, there will be jobs, and they're going to learn the other skills you need. They're going to learn about building codes and zoning and detailing and RFIs. They're going to learn that stuff, but now they need to be training themselves to think about and ask and grapple with these questions that are now, in a sense, it's a gift for a student. This is like a gift. You have big questions that people don't know the answers yet that you're going to be asked to look at. And you don't have to look far to find a topic, a subject, something to do work about and something to grapple with.
All right. Awesome. I think that's some great advice for students. And I'm sure they'll be pretty inspired by listening to you, like how I am.
Well, I'm really enjoying this because I have an opportunity to speak to a young person like yourself in a different part of the world.
Yeah.
And this is exciting. Like I said, we love part of our favorite parts is the people that we meet in our work, the people that come to work with us in our office, our clients. It's just so exciting, and that's what's hard about the quarantine, right? Is the lifeblood of our business is meeting people. But now, now I'm meeting you and you're on the other side of the world. So we have to stay positive. That's the big challenge right now. I think everyone's staying positive and staying upbeat and appreciating what we do have now and things that are going on now and learning from it. And we're going to be stronger for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before I let you go, there are a few things I want to talk about. Some more maybe on affordable housing. Sustainability in projects, right? It's not just the rainwater harvesting system or the solar panels that you put up on the terrace, or maybe even the materials, right? It's also more about the design, like how functionally does it work, how well does it work, how good is the lighting inside the space. So how would you define sustainability in your projects?
It's a great question. And I think, I'm just going to tie it back again to what we've been talking about because it's so prevalent right now. Traditionally, at least here in America, home is a place where you spend, let's say from 6 p.m. or if the kids maybe get home at 4 p.m. And maybe the mother, or in some cases the father, is home all day, but the house gets used most, right, at between 5 and 9 p.m. at night or something, right, and then in the morning. Now a house is being used, at least right now, the house is being used all day long, right? So the engine is running all day and sometimes all night, depending on how many children you have and where they're at in their sleep cycle. But so in the big scope of things, houses don't use that. Apartment buildings don't really use that much energy if you think about it. Now, of course, there's a lot of units and it adds up, and especially if someone has a large home in the suburbs. But in terms of just hours of use, in theory, a house should not be using that many resources. This is given the way economies work. So again, the key is understanding what the home is about, who's using it, when they're using it, what they're doing there, right? So before you go and throw some solar panels on it, and before you harvest rainwater, part of it is just optimizing the use of the building, right? That there shouldn't be waste in terms of the design of the building. That's where sustainability in my mind starts. That you optimize the design of the building, the use of floor area, the construction, because a lot of the embedded carbon in a building comes from construction.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't mean finding new sustainable materials. It just means building it in the most inefficient way possible, right? And not being wasteful in how we build and design buildings. Now, again, then it comes into questions of heating and cooling a building. That's obviously maybe the biggest draw on energy, especially in a home. So we look to our engineers, but we see now a lot of it is in terms of VRF. We're maybe going a lot more to electric only. We use less natural gas. And this is again, I think, where it comes down to, because and it doesn't meet people's needs. If you heat a building or cool a building in a way that doesn't meet people's needs,
Yeah.
then they're gonna overuse it, and then you're gonna waste energy. So, for example, baseboard heating, right? Radiators, super simple. You can argue about whether it's the most, to burn gas, but if that heats the building during the winter and the building management can shut it off at the right time, to provide energy the way it's needed and used is the most sustainable way to live. Now there's requirements for green sustainability that the city provides and so on and so forth. But I think, again, it comes down to understanding and building as a whole and getting in touch with what that's about. And that's the way I feel, that's the way we are most sustainable.
Yeah. And even technology can also help to a large extent.
Well, very sophisticated building management systems, I'd say, in that level, it's interesting. I don't know how much more time we have, but
yeah,
I think a lot of the technology gets put off on the individual, right? To give the user more control, which in terms of sustainability it's maybe counterintuitive. The biggest, I think, savings that we get are the changes that have been made to efficiency, boiler efficiencies, the efficiency with which we can burn fuel, the ways in which building owners are able to manage their building system. Now, that's not to say that tenants and individuals shouldn't have control of their space, because they should, but you have to understand that in terms of sustainability, the goal being to maximize our resources and minimize our footprint on the environment, the technology is happening on a really deep level, and what the user is exposed to is a very, very superficial surface level of it. But again, you have to provide them for the expected level of comfort, and you have to provide them for the expected level of control. But it's the play between those two things where the technology becomes super important, right? It takes a very, very smart system to provide control for the owner and control for the user in a way that can meet both of their needs.
Yeah, I think that's we're almost there to that point, but yeah.
But it's an exciting time. I think, the other thing you've seen is, I don't know how the pandemic started, but obviously we've been stressing our resources as a planet. And you mentioned it now the air is clean and you can go and walk out. And at the same time, it's like, thank God there's been enough food, right? Our days are full and we're busy. There's ways in which we were living, which maybe we don't need to be everywhere all the time. And maybe we don't need to use so many resources. Maybe we don't need to pump so much, smoke into the airs. Obviously we can't live this way forever. It's stressing our societies in lots of other ways. But there's ways in which as society we can change our lifestyles, and more walkable neighborhoods, people working at home, closer to home. These are all things that will help our environment and will help everyone's quality of life.
Yeah, and we are definitely like an outdoor species, so we can't really stick to one place for a long time. So yeah, so hopefully we'll get back to some parties and some amount of outdoor activities in the future.
Yeah, and find a park and go out and go for a walk and go for a hike, and and appreciate our surroundings. God gave us this beautiful earth, so we should appreciate it and just take good care of it.
All right, great, Eli. I just want to ask you, like, what are your future plans for the firm, for yourself? Where do you see yourself maybe 10 years from now?
So I think starting with the future is now. Where, like I mentioned, the lifeblood of our business has always been getting out and meeting people, which is hard right now. So we're working on a project right now, a networking project, and that's sort of our number one focus right now. And it's exciting. I think it's new and it's different. We're going to be coming out with that in the next few weeks. We'd love if you would participate in it. Again, the idea of encouraging people to meet and be social and to get some positive energy going around right now. Further out, we're just gonna, we're going to keep pushing on the housing. That's what we love. We're going to obviously provide a lot of affordable housing because that's what's needed, and we have a passion for it. I would like to see Meltzer Mandl. Most of our work has been in New York City. If we expand beyond New York City, if we go to the broader region, to America at large, maybe even to India,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be cool, man. I mean, that's we're looking to grow right now, and that's one of our primary goals. And let's get out there, and we want to make a positive influence on the world, and we want to meet lots of people and enjoy what we have here.
Yeah, housing is like a big problem in India, and the people have a bigger hand in housing because they construct do-it-yourself homes, like shacks, and there's the biggest slum in Asia is Dharavi in Mumbai. So since we don't have housing to accommodate us, we create this huge sort of, it's like an organism which starts growing, and people just keep coming. They try to evolve with the place. So it's I think it's relative to every place. It depends on the government, and but yeah, hopefully, as also as an architect, how much of a dialogue do you have with the client or with the community at large who are going to stay at your buildings or the projects you're going to stay in?
In New York, it's a lot. There's community board meetings. The client we're obviously very in touch with, and these clients are embedded in the communities that they're serving, and it's in their best interest to have a positive relationship with those communities, right? And if it's through political organizations, or it's just through community organizations, or just personal relationships, it's vital. It's so important that there's a buy-in from the community, right? And there's a buy-in from the government agencies because we do get subsidy from them, and it's really a collaborative effort. It's really a team effort. And like you said, every locale is different. So that's one reason why, again, we focus on New York City, because we understand and we're in touch with these different pieces and we're comfortable with it. If you just go across the river to New Jersey, it's a very different system in terms of just how projects get built and how the community interacts with it. So it's super important. I think it's fascinating to hear how it goes on in India. I'd love to maybe do another hour about housing in India.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the next round.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have you in the future as well, and go in depth on certain topics. It's always interesting to have guests over again and talk about how much they've progressed, what they have plans for the future, and yeah, everyone has a journey to tell, and it's great to have you on, Eli.
Thank you, Manish. It was wonderful to meet you, and I just wish you and your family the best. Stay safe and stay positive, and hope to see you in person. So on this side of the ocean or that side of the ocean very soon.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Eli, before I let you go, there is this small quickfire round which I have of the podcast. So I'll just ask you a bunch of questions and you could give brief answers.
Sure.
All right. So which book has inspired you the most, maybe as an architect or in general as well?
The Torah. I live my life by the words of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses.
All right. What's on your playlist right now?
My playlist right now? A lot of white noise, because I've been sharing my bedroom with my son who's attending school online.
All right. Which city would you consider your favorite?
My favorite city? I love Jerusalem. I spent a year studying there. It's a very special place. It's a very walkable city, and obviously has a lot of history to it. The weather's pretty good. Definitely, I think it's better than New York. I have a lot of family there too.
Yeah, I think that's the first time someone said like a city which is better than New York. So that's interesting to hear.
I love New York, but Jerusalem is special.
All right. What was the daily routine in your life, before the pandemic started?
Yeah, I try to get up early. Like I said, I go to synagogue. I come home. I try to have breakfast with my family, get them off, the kids off to school, and then I'm in the office. Although I don't, I have trouble sitting in one place for too long. So I have meetings. I try to get around, get into our clients' offices. And I try to generally, my workday, I try to split, I'd say, into thirds. One third of it is focused on production and getting the work done and managing the work. Another third is looking for new work, marketing, meeting people, networking. And then the last third is sort of just managing the business, payroll and the bookkeeping and staffing and all the nitty gritty. Um, and then, again, try to be home for dinner, find some time to maybe go for a run during the day, spend some time with my wife, and get a good night's sleep. Once a week, we observe the Sabbath, so that's wonderful. Every Friday night, and just spend the day with my family and we have some nice meals together. And my wife is an amazing cook, and she produces a feast for us, which is very special.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate. I work with my father. I get to see him a lot and see my mother, and that was the life I was living, and
How
hopefully get back
different
to
is
it.
it now?
It's sort of the same. It just all happens in my apartment.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Eli, I think I'll have you, I wanted to discuss more about religious spaces and how an architect designs these spaces, but maybe we could keep it for the future episode.
Sure.
And also, what's the best way our listeners could get in touch in case, they want to reach out to you?
Hit me up on LinkedIn and check out our website, meltzermandlpc.com. And there's a link there. You can send us an email. And obviously, how to get in touch with me. So
Yeah.
that's the way too. But LinkedIn I love, and because we can build our community and share things. That's our big social media platform.
Yeah, everyone's on LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
All
But
right.
again, we're looking for new ways to communicate. How can you have that like networking experience? So that's very much on our mind right now.
All right. Thanks, Eli, for coming to the Archgyan podcast, for taking your time out and sharing your story. It was pretty informational, firstly, and also very inspirational. So thanks, and I hope to have you in the future as well.
Thanks so much, Manish. Best of luck and take care.